Hey, everybody, I'm Suzanne Carawan. I am the host of the Boy Mom podcast, and I'm delighted today to be here with Carol Golden, who is a renowned author, expert, and mother. So, hey, Carol, welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, first, we usually start with asking everybody, just tell me about your children. What do you got in the what do you have in the nest?
Okay, so I have an older son, and he has a younger sister. So just a boy and a girl, which in
Okay.
itself,
Yes.
the
And
differences. Whew.
I love when we have the divided household mom because you've gotten the ability to see both of it. And so we'll start right from the get-go, right? So both as babies, were they both easy? Like what was the difference between the boy and the girl baby?
Well, let me just say that I think for me, I grew up with two sisters and was very close to my mother. So I kind of didn't know what to do
Yeah.
with this very active, very happy, but kind of different because I didn't have that orientation towards how different little boys can be. And so it was he was kind of a work in progress for me. And
Yeah.
then when I was pregnant with his sister, I got divorced. So for 16 and a half years, I raised them on my own. And for that reason, trying to understand your son when you don't have a husband to say,
Mm,
oh, I see that in him. I know what's happening here. That probably created a bit more of a challenge for me.
mm,
My other thing I would share is my son is just like me. And it's
mm.
never the things that you love about yourself
So in
reflecting it in the child, you know?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I know you're such a learned individual. Learning to you is a huge thing. So, I mean, were you sitting there looking at the child saying like you're just some freak? I don't understand you. Or were you like quickly reading all the books and parenting, et cetera, to find out, oh, this is like a different creature than you are?
Well, yeah, what I found the best advice that I got, because obviously my daughter is a much calmer, easy person. There's nothing calm and easy about me. Therefore, I found I found just as I do today, I found my greatest source was talking to other women who
Mm,
also had some knowledge about raising their sons, etc. And the books were good, but I think the women that I was asking knew my son and I. So they would observe things. They're the ones who pointed out to me, you know, Carol, that activity, his need to produce and to keep going, you don't recognize that? So I wound up,
right.
finding that other moms
Yeah.
were were a great resource. Matter of fact, knowing you had two boys,
Mm,
I was very observant to see, and your two boys are very different.
mhm.
So I
Yeah.
was observant to see when you ran into a joy or
Mhm.
a challenge, how you would change depending on which of your sons you were dealing with. I observed that with my other friends as we were all raising our children. I also turned to teachers. Teachers
Mhm.
get a terrible rap
Mm,
because we never say to them, boy, you have a lot of experience year over year dealing with it. So I would say that other women and teachers were, for me, the greatest source. I think the books were more general
mhm.
because they weren't actually dealing with the type of little boy that I thought that I had.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this. I have two questions actually, follow because I think you make a really good point. I don't know that as mothers, when we have a son, I think I don't know that we necessarily realize how much of maybe our genealogy is passed down to them or personality traits. And so I think because it is an opposite gender, maybe we do miss that. I think that's a really good point. You might miss that about that in the son. And then, so what do you think the top qualities are that you passed on there? Your goods and bads there to your son?
I would say both of us don't know how to slow down. And
Mm-hmm.
when you don't slow down, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So the intensity, sometimes we need to lower that. And when he was younger and I took him to a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I'm not here to have you tell me too much about him, etc. I want you to give him tools
Mm.
that he can use in situations. That was a smart thing to do because
That
just
was smart.
understanding him was important,
Yeah.
but that wasn't going to help him. And
Mm-hmm.
when she gave him tools, knowing that I had those same faults, I started to say, okay, how would I use those
Yeah, right.
tools,
Yeah,
right?
right. You can learn through that too.
Right. And then I think the other trait that both of us have is we're very loyal. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
A lot
To a
of
fault, maybe.
people, yes, something happens and they move on to the next friend, especially if it's something challenging, you know.
Mhm.
He's not inclined to do that. And I admired that in him. So I thought maybe I can dig that out of myself as well and not
Mhm.
just say this person is a professional friend. When they're not involved in my profession, I won't care about them anymore. That's really sad because we meet so many great
Mhm.
people along the way. And so you can only pick four or five, but they're
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
So,
But that's tough, right? I mean, so you just managing that with him, because if that's in the DNA, and then the world of friends and school is so transient for so many years, and let's say starting to date and all those, I mean, that can be a real heartbreak situation, a really hard to understand that for one that has the loyal gene when others don't
yeah.
reciprocate. That's a tough one. Have you seen that in him? You've had to help him to
Well,
cope with
the
that?
yeah, the other thing that I think was helpful to both of us because it was a difficult thing. Because I was single and in financial services, if you're really a female and you're going to get promoted, sometimes you had to change companies to
Mhm.
be recognized, etc. And so we lived in seven different states through his school years. Well, that
Hmm.
required making new acquaintances, new friends, hanging on to maybe one from the prior school or the prior state. And so I think it made us more more aware of selecting who you're going to
Oh,
spend your
that's
time with.
interesting. Okay, yeah. So actually honing the skill to say who's actually not, kind of worth it, if you will, but who's a good investment or not.
Right, exactly. And if we had just stayed in the same place for all those years, I'm sure it would have been a very different situation. But myself and my son, as well as my daughter, had to keep moving forward, keep saying, okay, so every time that they expected a friend to remain, you know, geez, everybody's on their phone 24/7, right?
Hmm.
But if this person didn't bother with them, they started to figure out, sadly enough, that there's differences between the types of friends that come along, whether it's a deep friendship or just an acquaintance or someone that you knew through maybe a team, etc. I think it helped us to let go of certain relationships and value others. And I think that not a lot of men have that
Hmm.
experience, and it's
Hmm.
visible in my son as an adult.
That's fascinating. So, I mean, I know you've always had a high-powered career, right? And I don't know one executive woman who has never had some sort of, let's that the right thing to do with my kids? Was it not? Any of those types of things. But because again, it's always a trade-off. I mean, there's only so much time, there's only so much mom to go around. How did you make sure that what was the trade-off like for you, and how did you, or do you have any regrets on that, of like how could you make sure that he had his time with you, right, as well, while you're having this high-powered career? Because you did quite a bit of stuff, including travel.
It's not an area that I feel that I did a good job. There was just so much time to go around. And because of that, and because it was me supporting these children, there was no alimony or anything like that supporting us. He got less parenting
Mhm.
than a lot of other boys. And what I tried to do was, Eric is very athletic. And what I tried to do was confide in the coach that he was working with, no matter where we were, that I did travel a lot, and
Mhm.
that I I needed to be told when I needed to understand something, or I was completely missing this because I had never played that sport. I
Mhm.
need I think that's an area of regret for me, that there
Mhm.
just wasn't enough time, and I didn't know how to handle it because there were not a lot of women in that
Sure.
situation, and I couldn't. Most of them still had a husband's or a relationship or something. But, as we moved to these 7 or 8 states, that didn't help. And
Right.
so I had to turn to sports, um,
Mhm.
and depend on his coaches to be able to say things to him that, generally coming from a mother, sounded like
Mhm.
whining, complaining, or not
Mm.
understanding.
Mhm.
So I had to use resources that were maybe not the normal, maybe not the usual way of saying, okay. I had a friend who talked to him. As a single parent, you have to find a resource to help you
Mhm.
with, whether it's a son or a daughter.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're
Use
not
that
going
network.
to, yeah, you're not going to be everything, and you're not
Yeah.
going to be able to do everything that well. So to me, the smart thing to do was say, where am I falling down, and what can I do to support this child, since I'm not good in that area.
Yeah. And I don't know that, I mean, because I don't have a daughter, so I can't say this, but I personally think that one of the wonderful things about having a son, but also it's kind of sad. It's a bittersweet experience, I think, all the way up, because I think you're raising them for them to go and just
Mhm.
not stay at home as much as perhaps the daughter. And I don't know if we just inadvertently do that as women, but I mean, I do think that there's all these, I mean, there's a million cultures on earth where the boy's gone by 9 years old anyway, right? So
It's
they wouldn't
true.
even talk to their mom, but past that, and maybe you come home like once a year, like you went out hunting, and maybe you come back, every now and again from war or something. So it is kind of a lonely road, I feel like, sometimes as a boy mom. But I mean, so having said that, with all that, you use your resource. I think it's such a wise thing. You don't have to go it alone. I think I know a lot of women write to me, and I say the same thing, like you got to build that whole, village around them, if you will, and use that. But as he went up and he went into those years of going through all the adolescence and going into high school and then into college, what a lot of people get very upset because they talk about the communication with their son, right? And like, how much are you actually communicating? Because the daughter's on the phone with them every day, are very, they're talking all the time, et cetera. And the sons have kind of the silence. And the mothers always tell me they kind of sit there and they just go, I don't really have insight into it's like a black box. They don't really know what's going inside the sun. I personally don't know why that's different to their husbands or partners, but just say. So how have you dealt with that piece of it? What advice, I guess I'm really asking, could you give to other mothers who feel there's a lot of very lonely mothers out there.
Right. Well, to begin with, I got a lot of insight from the coach. I mean,
Mhm.
knowing what was going on with the team, right? So you sit down, you don't have anything coming from them. So what you have to do is say, what do they want to talk about? Well, they want to talk about their team,
Mhm.
right? Or they want to talk about a hobby, or they want to talk about the music they're listening to, even if you hate their music, and that's
Mhm.
very
Okay.
generational.
Yep.
You say to them, so are they new or is this their third app? Uh, you have to get them used to the fact that you're not prying, but that you're interested. Fine line, whether it's a
Mm.
daughter or a mother, fine
Yeah.
line. But if if they get used to the fact that they can say things to you and there's no judgment at the end of
Yeah.
it, they go,
Yeah.
you would hate this. And I would say, how do I know that I should hate it? What do you
Mhm.
think? Why would
Oh,
I
that's smart.
hate it? And then, of course, they get to tell you why you hate it, etc.
Yeah.
So you're getting an insight into what they think of you, right? And you're just going to store that. And then later, when you want to bring up a topic, you know that they felt you were not good at something, or they felt that you had heard them, etc. Well, I found that over the years, my son got used to talking to me because I listened. And so often, we're parents. We want to lecture, we want to
Mhm.
correct, we want to offer all this advice. We're not generally good at listening, okay? And so now when my son texts me or something, I text back only the same amount of text as I got. There's no paragraph
Oh,
going
oh,
back.
interesting. Oh, what a good little tip, right? You don't like inundate him with all the words and everything else.
No,
Oh,
because
smart.
in general, husbands might be the ones who are gregarious, but that's not too often either.
Hmm.
The other thing you can do is listen to how men talk with men. It's the weather, the sports, something that no blame can be attributed to. So when you're talking to a son, they don't think you understand because you're from, Venus and they're from Mars or
Hmm.
whatever that book was. So I think you have to mirror a little bit of the way that they're comfortable communicating. And frankly, it's built pretty good. Sometimes my son keeps me on the phone for an hour now. An hour, would you believe?
See, that's great to know that day can come, right? But it's a good point. So, I mean, how much is, since you've come from financial services, I mean, you are and have been trained to be like an expert listener. I mean, I think those are such good tips. And I think it is so difficult for mothers to zip it. I mean,
Well, we're
maybe
we're
that's a women
supposed to
as a
be
whole, but
nurturing and
yeah, and
and
fixing,
and
fixing,
right,
constantly on
fixing,
it, right? Constantly on
constantly
it.
fixing,
Yes.
right? So just remember that the woman that your son will marry or live with is either going to reflect you or be a total
Yeah.
opposite of you.
Let, oh my gosh, let's talk about that because that's like one of the greatest fears I think of all mothers is going through those dating years, right? And then to the marriage. So your son is married now, right? And
Mhm.
he has
Right,
children. So you've got grandchildren now. So
right.
he's run the race, if you will, and he's gotten there, and you like your daughter-in-law, and you have a
I
great
do.
relationship with her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how did that come about? I mean, that's like the most fortunate thing in my world. That next milestone, like I would, life would be,
Terrified.
I would no, it would be a victory if like I like who they marry. I mean, what a joyful thing that would be.
It is, and it's very significant because when I have lunch, I have a good friend and we have lunch once a month. And her daughter-in-law is not her cup of tea. Okay.
Hmm.
And she has issues with the way the daughter-in-law is raising
Mm.
the children. So I said to her, so what are you going to do? And she said, I don't know. And I said, what if you took your grandson to your place for the weekend? She's not there to judge you. You're not there to judge her, and so on and so. She's been doing that now for 3 years. It
Okay.
gives the mother-in-law the ability to, I mean, the daughter-in-law the ability to do her own thing. It looks like a
Hmm.
big favor, etc. When she's asked to stay overnight at their house, she said you can cut the tension with a knife. And I said,
Oh.
it happens. It really does.
Hmm.
Whereas for me, I don't get enough time with my daughter-in-law, because the kids will want
Hmm.
at you.
Hmm.
So I have the opposite thing. My daughter-in-law is not judgmental. I can say things like, the son is a redo of my son. And I said to her,
Hmm.
oh,
Ah,
wait till you see the
see,
energy
now you're
level
the
here.
expert. Exactly.
Yeah,
Now you're the expert
right.
in the whole thing. Right.
And then I
Yeah.
called you because he was
Yeah.
doing box lacrosse. And I
Yeah.
said, don't,
Right.
don't worry, we have someone we can ask
Yeah.
about
Exactly.
this
Right. Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
I do think
see,
the energy.
again, I'm looking for others who
Hmm.
lived it. Instead of calling just anyone, I called you because you
Hmm.
have boys who did the very sport and he loves it. And he's now in
Hmm.
his third year, right? So that's another
Yeah. Yeah.
thing that if you don't really care for your daughter-in-law, there are others who have been there, done that. And again,
Hmm.
women are experts. You just have to ask them about their expertise that relates to the information that you need. First of all, it calms you down when you go, oh,
Hmm.
you mean he won't be running around with this stick breaking things in the house and stuff? No, they put a thing out in the back. We put a thing out in the
Hmm.
back so he
Yep.
can use that.
Yeah.
Don't expect. So they have had the experience. So if I had a bad relationship or a didn't like a boyfriend or a girlfriend,
Yeah.
one, I would button it up because you don't want to force them to prove you wrong. But I would talk to other moms who
Yeah. Yeah.
who maybe didn't love the relationship. If it doesn't work, you don't want to be part of that.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good tip. That is a good, right. Right. Because you don't want to be on the wrong side of history on that one. Yeah.
They're going to need someone to blame. Don't raise your hand.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Right. And that's a really good point. And it's yeah, I think I can't even imagine that you as a mother-in-law would be the one to come in there and like overstep and encroach. You know,
Well,
I would think
there
that you
there are
would let
topics
them
though,
lead.
Suzanne, that you will find, they're living in a very expensive area, very expensive, right?
Mm.
And I said to them,
And
do
you're a
you want
financial advisor.
uh, you know,
Right.
do do you want to
Yeah, right.
talk to me or do you want to talk to someone else, right? Well, she
Right.
chose her mother's financial advisor, not me. So there
Oh,
are,
okay.
yeah, exactly. And then I said to my son, "Are you comfortable?" You know, and he said, "I don't know, Mom. I've always trusted you." And that you'll get into those situations. And I said
Mm.
to him, okay, but I don't want your wife or their financial planner is her parents. I said, you know what, Eric, this is not worth World War II. I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
at least give it a go. And if you find that there's an area that's difficult, then I feel comfortable saying to Jody, just one-on-one, we need to talk about this, and I don't want to upset anybody here, but I am concerned.
Mm.
So depending on the daughter-in-law, my daughter-in-law said, "Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm a little confused about it." It could have been my friend's
Yeah.
daughter-in-law, which would have told her to take a hike.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
Well,
you got to find a way to know, should you or shouldn't you?
and I think that's such a good pivot point because I want to get to talking about your actual professional work and the work you're doing, um, kind of long-term care in caregiving space, et cetera. But I think also let's talk about longevity, right? And let's talk about end of life, because I think that it's a topic that you and I are both comfortable with, and most people aren't. And I think that there is kind of a latent fear that when you have a daughter, like the daughter will be with you and take care of you, but when you have a son, right? Like, oh, that's a little bit different. And so, in all the experience, so maybe first just tell the audience a little bit about your background in this area. But then I want to kind of delve into that about the differences of like sons being caretakers, right? Versus kind of daughters and the planning piece of it.
Well, I got interested in the field of longevity because when I was doing planning, one of my plans fell apart. And when I saw that it wasn't just a financial um, boondoggle, because they weren't liquid, and the wife had a stroke, and all of a sudden they were forced to take things out that, frankly, we had planned to leave in for a long time. So I learned very quickly that healthcare was going to be one of those factors that can upend a plan. And over the last few years, even when you and I have discussed this, healthcare has become a real factor in retirement. And then you add longevity, where you have three stages of longevity. That first stage where you feel freedom and you're going to do all sorts of things. And then the second stage, kind of have to adapt to some health issues, some aging issues. And then that third step, where you have to really accept that you can't live in a house that's a townhouse with 3 stories,
Mm,
because you can't do it anymore. So longevity and healthcare started to really, really become such a big factor in long-term care, in longevity, but especially in retirement planning.
mm,
And so that led me to write my last book, which is asking financial planners to include healthcare. But it's a how-to book. It's, well, great, Carol, but how do I do it? So I go into great detail of 2 or 3 different ways that they can do it. But as far as families, in all of my research, most of the time, as you and I both know, women are in the majority with the caregiving. And what I find interesting is that men and women do it so differently. We are
mm,
very much hands-on. It's just in our nature. The men tend to hire other people to do things
uh,
that we're more inclined to do. So the whole experience with sons is not as much hands-on, which, considering he has a wife and a family, that's probably an expectation that you should come to grips with. He can't be there. And if his wife is working, neither can she. And that's the reality now of families that both work. And that's very
mhm,
typical of Gen X families nowadays, especially once the children are in school. Even
mhm.
if they're stay at home, usually changes. So I think in talking with sons about aging and stuff, I can tell you my son thinks I'm going to live forever. I bring it up,
I think sons like to think that. Yes,
right?
I
They
think that's
can't
true too.
deal.
Yeah,
They can't deal with
can't
that.
deal.
Whereas my daughter-in-law gives an answer which you would expect more like, oh, you've got a long way to go. You're going to be fine, but you're right. What are you planning to do? So I always think that when we're dealing with women, women are not risk adverse. They're risk sponges. They want to know as much as they can. Okay,
Hmm.
this is the risk. These are my options. I want to know about that so that I can move
That's so
forward.
true. Wrist sponges. I love that. That's true. I'm thinking about all the women, no matter what you're talking about. They're like, okay, tell me everything there is to know about, right? Initiative
Right,
A, and all the things
right.
that could happen. And then what did you do? And then what did this? Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And even what you're doing with moms and their sons. So
Mhm.
how did you handle this? Because the listener very well may say, oh, goodness, I'm going to try that. Or, yep, I tried that. That's true. Or whatever it is. We
Right.
listen to other women. The men, on the other hand, they can't quite cope with the idea of losing their mothers. And
Mommy.
so
Yeah.
I have gone the other way. Instead, I say to my son, well, the fact is, I'm still in control, and this is what I'm planning to do. He does okay with that. If I say,
Mm.
well, at some point, I'm not going to
I'm
be
like,
able
you need to figure it out. Oh,
Mm,
yeah.
no, he
Oh,
doesn't
so
want to hear that. So again, you have to talk to them somewhat like a coach would if they're
mm,
athletic. If they're into music, you have to make it a little poetic so that they understand. Here's the facts, and this is,
game plan. Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense. They
yeah.
understand the game. We need to have a game plan. Okay. They can execute the game plan.
So when I'm talking to financial advisors, I say to them, look, you need to create for your business an ability to talk to more than one generation. And that led in that last book to these longevity literacy gatherings. And they go, well, advisors over the years have been told to bring others in, but never have. I said, I agree, and they never will. Only I'm suggesting that they bring in a Medicare specialist. They don't do
Yeah.
financial planning. That's not a threat. That shows them that if they're a high income person, they're going to pay over $600 a month for Medicare Part B. They fall off their chair. They go, what? Okay, so there are aspects that I think you need to know because it's going to influence the kind of financial planner that you work with. And I
Uh-huh.
think for, saying to your son, listen, you're, 50 years old now. I was with someone this morning. His son is 51. I said, you should bring your son because 50, he has no idea. He'll say, well, Dad, I have until 65 for this Social Security. It was about that. And I said, yes, but if you lose your wife, you're going to lose her Social Security. It's going to affect your lifestyle. How can it hurt that he start to understand some of what will really influence what you can and cannot
Right.
do? So again, we're not telling our sons,
Yeah.
we're offering them the fait accompli. This is the way it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
They do better because they're not imagining you gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I want to ask a question that I've noticed recently, and it's a little over into we're kind of just go with me for a second here because it's just a phenomenon. But now that I've got you on the phone, I want to ask this question because I've been so let me first start with the demographics of who listens to this podcast. So over the last year, it's been very fascinating to watch who listens to it, who volunteers to be on it. It's actually slightly more men than
Mhm.
women, which I wouldn't have expected. But what I've found is there's a lot of men who don't have great relationships with their mothers, right? And I think they're listening to, I think also modeling. I think they want to have better relationships with their wives and on and on. um, or they're extremely proud of their mothers, right? And then this is something, it's a very comfortable platform for them to be able to talk about their mothers and what, what they've she's given to that particular man. So what's interesting to me, so we have that going, and then most of the people listening to it are either, they're usually on the high net worth side, they're on the more affluent side, right, more educated. And I found this really interesting thing going on the last year because I've also been doing all this volunteer fundraising, right? So I've been doing all this volunteer fundraising. And one of the things I've noticed in the area in which I'm fundraising is, again, it's a predominant affluent, usually it's a two dual income household, some stay-at-home moms. But what I've noticed is that the men have total control of the money, complete. And so the thought was, oh, I can talk to all the moms and the sports moms, and they'll be, writing me checks, et cetera, because they love all their stuff they're doing. And what I found out is that even though the woman has a high net worth job, a great career, making no money decisions, right? Like, I mean, like maybe she'll make a check for like, here's $100 one off, but like a consistent giving pattern or any sort of large donation, right? Okay, that's fine. But what's interesting is that, and what scares me is that we know that the numbers say that the women aren't planning and they're not involved in the planning because the numbers, I don't, you know the stat. If the man should die, the number of women
Mhm.
who move financial advisors is huge. But what scares me is I can't believe we still see this in 2026. One, right? And two, I don't know how much they have a plan. And then they have a son, and I've heard them tell me a million times is, oh, if something should happen to my husband, boom, I'm just going to turn to the son. And I'm going like, I'm not sure that the son is aware that that's going to happen, to your point, right? And then, but she still doesn't know anything. So somewhere in this, I guess my question is more about the mother side of it, right? There's this expectation that she's just going to always get taken care of by some male. And even in 2026, and I know somebody out there is listening to, well, they're probably not because they don't have children, but they're freaking out. But what do you see in that? Like, if we know that we're going to outlive these men, we have a much longer life cycle, right? At what point do we say, we as women, as mothers, we probably should know this ourselves and do this and think about our legacy towards the sons and to those extra generations instead of being the recipient of somebody else's. Does that make sense what I'm asking? I don't know that I'm
It does,
articulating the best there.
and I have a friend who she fell and she got hurt, and her son works at a well-known hospital. So she zooped into his care. In other words, he got the other doctors, and so he
Mhm.
was orchestrating things. And then he decided that she's a neighbor and that her place should be put up for sale, and she needed to live closer to him in case there was some sort of an incident again, because she's alone, attractive, bright, but divorced. And I said to her, Kathy, is this something you want? And she said, well, I don't want to upset him. I said, well, but can he sell your place, displace you? She said, well, I do very well with my allowance. I said, an allowance? Uh-huh.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, yeah. So this is the woman you're talking about. And
Yeah.
I said to her, why does he handle your finance? She said, I don't like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. She said, I hated math in school and I simply don't want to do it. So I think I didn't have an answer for her. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she
Yeah.
stated very clearly. So after thinking it a little bit, I said to her, you think that the numbers are complicated? Is that it? She said, yeah. I said, hey, sweetie, if you have $100 in and you want to use $100, what part of that wouldn't you be comfortable with? So I said, if you were working with your own advisor and he said, this allowance allows you to do this, and these say, is that complicated? She said, well, why should I pay someone to do it if my son wants to do it? Didn't have an
Mhm.
answer for that one either. So
Yeah,
there are people who simply don't orient towards planning, especially if it's financial. And of course, now she's very unhappy. I had lunch with her the other day, and she said, I am paying for two places, the one near you and this hotel that I'm staying in while my place sells. And I said to her, how do you feel about that? She was upset, but
yeah.
she wouldn't challenge.
Understood. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now, I think other women have the impression that it's complicated and
It's
expensive to
complicated.
work
Right.
with someone. And that's simply not true, especially
Or they're, I
high.
think, going behind their back, or it's like there's something in there that's like a strange kind of, and it's still, and it's personal for me, Carol, because I think, like my mom didn't have any life insurance because my father was like, she's a stay-at-home mom. Why would she need life insurance? Right. And
Right,
then bankrupts our entire family. Right. So it's like,
right.
I'm a huge believer in like, hey, ladies, you two need to be,
Yeah,
especially you need to be really well insured because you're going to live for like ever.
right,
Right.
right. And you need to plan for it. But have you ever noticed, Suzanne, that women like that are the ones who do remarry?
Yeah,
They
that's true
want to
too.
be dependent, and women who do not remarry tend to say, "I loved my husband" or "I hated my husband," whatever the
Mhm.
case was,
Whatever the
and
case
I'm
might
not
be. Right.
doing that again.
Right. Right.
I've I've had it, put in my
No more
time,
new
and no, now I'm going
macroeconomics.
to manage
Right.
on my own. So I think some of it is just personality, the way that you were raised, whether you were one of those women who who
Mhm.
really felt that you enjoyed living with a man, or say you just don't like living alone. A lot of men remarry very quickly after their divorce.
Oh,
So if you have
yeah.
a son who has divorced, especially if they have a child involved, they tend to look for another spouse. I think the remarriage for the men is is even more prevalent than it
Yeah.
is for the women, right? And so in talking about mothers and sons, when you see your son going out of the frying pan into the fire because he's not sure how he will manage all of this, um,
Right.
that would be an interesting topic. Not my experience, but it would be an interesting topic for you to explore, for moms who've seen their sons do that. Did it work out? What happens if it doesn't? How bad is it if it doesn't work out, et cetera, et cetera? But I think a lot of
Yeah, that would be hard. That'd be hard. Maybe that's well, I mean, listen, I've had one son who, well, both my sons have had bad little high school relationships, right? And that was heartbreaking to just
I
watch them
remember
go through
that
that.
one.
Yes, having to watch that was heartbreaking, let alone to go through the dissolution of a marriage and whatnot. It's just, oh, so tough. So I'm going to finish up then because I know we're coming to the top of the hour with the question I always like to ask moms. And I'm interested to say, so I found that one of the two threads that usually I find that are in a successful mother-son relationship is one is humor, right? So what did you say is your favorite memory with your son that's a humorous one?
Neither one of us. My son is clever, but I'm not. So I I can't say, but he is the life of the party. He somehow can pun and come up with clever
Well, that
statements.
sounds like you. That's
I
sounds
don't
just
know.
like you. Yes, you are the queen of like every now and again you just have this one little zigger that comes, bam, comes in there. Yes,
Not
yes, very
aware.
clever. Very clever. So second thing is what is the role of prayer has been to you and your son? So do you find that as a mother, would you say that you pray over him, or even yeah, do you have that kind of piece of it?
No, because unfortunately, when I got divorced, as you can imagine, it was many years ago.
Hmm.
He was in Catholic school at the time, and we had to leave
Yes,
because
of
you
course.
couldn't be divorced.
Hmm.
And it confused my children. It confused me. And so we believe in a greater being, and
Hmm.
but we don't. I mean, yeah, with the children baptized and stuff, sure, but
Like, prayer
we
could be just the well-being and the wishes, right? And you're meditating over that type of
right.
thing. Yeah, I
And
don't
you know that
necessarily going to
song
church.
that he's such a great artist. He says, I only pray to God when I need something. Well,
Yeah.
fortunately, we're not like that. When we
Hmm.
pray to God, it's usually for a blessing and
Yeah.
that things work out. And, especially when there's an illness, we all turn
Yeah.
to prayer for that.
Sure. Of course. So in kind of your closing up, what's the top piece of advice that you would give to all these mothers that are out there today? There's so much anxiety, Carol. There's so much anxiety with mothers, and that's what I'd say. Just I get so many mothers that are so anxious, and they're thinking this is going to be it forever, right? And their son is going to be this way forever, and all these things. So, what would be your top piece of advice to other mothers out there?
I would say anxiety is normal. Okay, so deal with it. Say to yourself, God, I'm really, really wrapped up here. But try to think back to all the different stages where you thought it was the end. This poor kid was never going to X, and it passes. So you'll acknowledge your anxiety, and you will have to keep saying to yourself, this too shall pass, because it
Mhm.
really will. And be supportive, but do a lot of listening. We all do way too much talking.
Yeah, that's such sage advice. So, thank you so much for being on the program. Carol, where can we find your books in case somebody wants to find out?
It's on Amazon under my name, Carroll, that's Carroll,
Mhm.
Golden. That's the easy part. The Carroll, not
Yes,
so much.
Goldsies.
But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, easy.
at Amazon and of course in bookstores or my website, Carroll with two R's and two L's, carrollsgolden.com. Thank you for asking and thank
Awesome.
you for
Oh,
inviting.
absolutely. My pleasure. Your like I told you, your last book's my favorite one yet. And I think it is just so applicable. And I love just if again, if ladies out there and men too, if you haven't put together caregiving, we'll do another episode on that one because it's worth it. So Carol, thank you so much. As always, such a pleasure.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.